My father laughed when the lawyer said my grandmother left me one red kitchen timer and $10. He laughed so hard his face turned shiny, and my brother Mark leaned back in the conference chair like he had been waiting 4 years to hear that exact number. $10, Nina, he said, after all those nights sleeping beside her recliner. Guess Grandma knew free help when she saw it. His wife Kelly covered her mouth, but she was smiling. My mother did not smile. She just looked at the timer in the lawyer's hand and said, "That thing was always junk anyway." I was 32 years old. I had spent 4 years in my grandmother Ruth's house after her fall, handling her transfers, bathing schedule, medication chart, wound appointments, and every 2 a.m. call when she woke up afraid she had missed the bus to her old job at the county courthouse. I had lost my apartment, my job at a physical therapy clinic, my savings, and most of the person I used to be. And my family thought the final price of all that was $10 and a broken timer. Then the lawyer, Ms. Andrade, slid a second sealed packet across the table and said, "Ruth asked me to open this only if anyone laughed at Nina." That was the first time Mark stopped smiling. If your family ever called your time help because they did not want to call it labor, tell me in the comments what you would have done at that table. Because what was inside that packet did not just change the will reading. It shut down a licensed care business, opened a state investigation, and proved my grandmother had been counting every hour they told me did not matter. I need to go back to the first night at Maple Glen Rehab, because that is where the trap started. It was February 6, 2020. I was 28, working as a rehab aide at Pine Street Physical Therapy in Lancaster. I made $19.50 an hour, had a tiny second-floor apartment over a barber shop, and was saving for an occupational therapy assistant program. My life was not glamorous, but it was mine. I had a mug rack, a weekly grocery list, 2 friends who dragged me to trivia on Thursdays, and a calendar that still had blank squares on it. My grandmother Ruth fell on the icy strip between her mailbox and the curb. Hip fracture, wrist fracture, mild concussion. The surgery went well. The discharge plan did not. The case manager at Maple Glen said Ruth would need help with transfers, bathing, medication setup, meal prep, and supervision for at least 8 weeks, maybe longer. Ruth was 78, stubborn, and terrified of a nursing facility. My father, Alan, looked at me before the case manager finished talking. "Nina knows this stuff," he said. "She works in rehab." I said, "I work under therapists. I'm not a nurse." "You know more than any of us," my mother said, "and you do not have kids." That sentence landed like a stamp on my forehead. No kids, no husband, no reason to protect my own time. Mark was on speakerphone from his truck. He had just opened a non-medical home care agency called Bright Path Companion Services. He mostly staffed part-time aides for seniors who needed rides, meals, and overnight supervision. He said, "Listen, if Nina stays with Grandma for a while, we can keep the strangers out. Family care is better anyway." The case manager asked whether there would be a written care plan and payment agreement. My father waved one hand. "We are not that kind of family." I should have heard the warning right there. Ruth heard it. She was sitting in the wheelchair with a blanket over her legs, one hand wrapped in a brace, hair pinned badly because I had done it with hospital supplies. Her eyes moved from my father to me. "Nina has a job," she said. "Temporary," Dad said, using the voice he used when he wanted an argument to sound like kindness. "Just until you are steady again." 8 weeks became the phrase everyone repeated. 8 weeks to heal. 8 weeks of family stepping up. 8 weeks before I could go back to my apartment and my work schedule and my unfinished application for school. My supervisor at Pine Street, Marisol, gave me 2 weeks of emergency leave and then another 2 unpaid. After that, she needed an answer. Did they put anything in writing? She asked me in the supply room while I packed my locker. "It is my grandmother," I said. That was not what I asked. I remember shrugging because I was embarrassed. My family had made me feel selfish for even wondering about money. They said I would live rent-free. They said they would cover groceries. They said Mark could maybe put me on BrightPath's payroll later when his agency got more clients. They said Grandma would never forget what I did. Marisol looked at my name badge in my hand and said, "Love does not clock you out at the end of the day." I did not understand that sentence until much later. I moved into Ruth's one-story house on Finch Lane with 2 duffel bags, my work shoes, and a plastic bin of scrubs. The first week was a mess of alarms and pain pills. Ruth needed a gait belt every time she stood. She could not lower herself onto the toilet without help. She hated the shower chair. She cried the first time I had to wash her hair in the sink because she said she felt like a child. I started using the red kitchen timer on the counter because her medication schedule was tighter than anyone admitted. Acetaminophen every 6 hours. Blood thinner at 8 p.m. stool softener at breakfast. Ice packs 20 minutes on, 40 minutes off. The timer clicked loud enough to fill the kitchen. Ruth used to use that timer for biscuits. She was a courthouse filing clerk for 31 years, but baking was the thing people remembered. Her molasses biscuits, her lemon bars, her Sunday pot roast that somehow tasted like she had planned it 3 days earlier. When the timer rang, she would say, "Hear that? That is the house telling us not to forget." So I did not forget. I wrote everything in a spiral notebook because that is what I knew from clinic work. Date, time, medication, meals, bathroom, transfers, pain level, mood, appointments, phone calls, visitors. At first I did it so I could answer the nurse accurately. Then I did it because my father would call and ask, "How is Mom?" And what he meant was, "Is this still handled?" In March, the pandemic shut everything down. The 8-week plan disappeared under fear. Ruth was high risk, and suddenly everyone had a perfect reason to stay away. My parents dropped groceries on the porch. Mark texted that he could not risk exposing his clients. Kelly said the kids were remote learning, and she was drowning. Nobody came inside. Nobody offered to take a night. Ruth's hip improved slowly. Her fear did not. She had sundowning episodes where she thought strangers were in the hallway. She would call my name in a voice that sounded like a child calling from the bottom of a pool. I slept on the love seat because I could hear her better from there. By May, the cushion had a permanent dent shaped like my hip. The first proof beat came from a billing envelope I was never supposed to open. It was June 18, 2020. BrightPath Companion Services was printed in blue at the top, with Mark's agency logo, a little sun over a road. The envelope was addressed to Ruth but marked courtesy copy. I almost tossed it onto the desk. Then I saw my own name in the line item. Caregiver, Kelly D. Service dates, 501 through 531. Overnight companion care, 31 shifts. Total billed, $4,960. Kelly had not spent one night in that house. I stared at that paper for a long time. I thought maybe it was an internal estimate, or maybe Mark had made a mistake. I called him. He answered with noise in the background, kids yelling, television on. "Why is BrightPath billing Grandma for overnight care by Kelly?" I asked. There was a pause. Then he said, "It is just how we categorize family support." Kelly was not here. "Nina, do not get hung up on the form. The money stays in the family." "Whose money?" "Grandma has long-term care coverage for some non-medical help, and there is a county respite program. We are using what she qualifies for. That is smart." I said, "I am the one doing the care." "And you are living rent-free," he said. "Do you know what that house would rent for? $1,500 easy. Stop acting like everyone is exploiting you." That was the first time he used the sentence that would follow me for 4 years. We are keeping this practical. Anytime I asked for a night off, we are keeping this practical. Anytime I asked about pay, we are keeping this practical. Anytime Ruth asked why Mark's agency was on her paperwork when I was the one bathing her, lifting her, cooking for her, driving her, and sleeping beside her recliner, we are keeping this practical. I should have reported it then. I did not. I was scared. I had no job, no apartment, no savings left except $1,800 in a checking account. I also believed, foolishly, that if I challenged Mark, My family would punish Ruth by putting her somewhere she did not want to go. So I did what quiet people do when they know something is wrong but cannot yet afford the explosion. I made a copy. Ruth saw me scanning the bill with my phone in the laundry room. "What is that?" she asked. "Just paperwork." She looked at me over her glasses. Paperwork is never just paperwork. That evening, she asked me to bring her old accordion folder from the hall closet. It was green vinyl, cracked at the corners, labeled house, car, medical, tax in Ruth's neat courthouse handwriting. She opened the medical tab with her left hand and said, "If something comes to this house with my name on it, we keep it." That was how the second notebook started. The first notebook was care. The second notebook was records. Bills, envelopes, screenshots, canceled appointments, visitor names, mileage, grocery receipts, and every time Mark's agency claimed someone had been present who had not. By August, Bright Path had billed for 74 hours of daytime care by an aide named Denise. I had never met Denise. The bill said Denise prepared lunch, assisted with range of motion exercises, and provided companionship. On those days, I had timestamps from my own phone, photos of Ruth's lunch plates, a text to my father at 1:16 p.m. saying she refused soup, a grocery pickup receipt at 5:42 p.m. an appointment summary signed by me. I called Mark again. He sighed before I finished. "Nina, you are making this harder than it needs to be." "No, you are billing for people who are not here." "Do you want Grandma to lose coverage?" he snapped. "Because that is what happens when family members start making noise. Programs get cut, reviews happen, then everyone suffers." "Everyone," I said, "or you?" He went quiet. Then he said it again, slower. "We are keeping this practical." I hung up shaking. Ruth asked me what he said. I told her enough. Not all of it, but enough that she understood the shape. She did not yell. Ruth almost never yelled. She had spent 3 decades filing court documents for people in the middle of divorces, bankruptcies, custody fights, and property disputes. She believed yelling was what people did when they did not have copies. "Bring me the timer," she said. I set the red timer on the side table. It had a crack near the dial from the year Mark dropped it while sneaking cookies before Thanksgiving dinner. Ruth turned it in her hands. "Your grandfather bought me this in 1974, she said. "I burned every biscuit for 2 weeks before that. He said a woman who files papers for judges should not be defeated by biscuits." She smiled a little, then tucked the timer into the basket beside her chair. From that day on, whenever the timer rang, Ruth would say, "Write it down." So I did. Fall turned into winter. My world shrank to Ruth's house, the pharmacy drive-through, telehealth appointments, and the front porch where I stood at night just to feel air that had not passed through the furnace filter. My parents visited twice between October and December. Mark came once, stood in the doorway for 9 minutes, took a selfie with Ruth, and posted it with the caption, "Checking on my favorite lady." Ruth saw the post because Aunt Marion showed it to her on a video call. "Favorite lady," Ruth repeated after the call ended. He did not take his coat off. The second proof beat came from the porch camera. Ruth's neighbor, Mr. Haskins, installed it after someone stole packages on Finch Lane. His camera caught our driveway, too. He was 81, retired from the postal service, and had the habit of noticing time. He would call me if a delivery sat too long or if Ruth's trash bin was still at the curb. In January 2021, he waved me over while I was bringing the bin back. "You know that blue car that says Bright Path on the side?" he asked. "Mark's agency car." He nodded. "It comes by some Mondays. Driver sits out front 5 minutes, takes a photo of the house, leaves." I felt cold under my coat. "Do they go inside?" he asked. "No." He looked down the street. "Thought so." 3 days later, he brought me a flash drive in a sandwich bag. Not dramatic, not secret agent, just an old man with a postal worker's sense of proof. Short clips, each stamped with date and time. Bright Path car arrives. Driver steps onto porch. Driver photographs front door. Driver leaves. Total time 4 minutes and 12 seconds. On those same dates, BrightPath billed Ruth for 2-hour wellness visits. I put the flash drive in the green folder. Ruth wrote Mr. Haskins a thank you note with her good hand. Her writing leaned downhill, but the words were clear. Thank you for noticing the difference between stopping and staying. I cried in the bathroom after I read that sentence. By spring 2021, the family pattern was settled. My parents handled phone calls. Mark handled billing. Kelly handled judgment. I handled Ruth. When I asked my father to come sit with her so I could get my eyes checked because my headaches were getting worse, he said, "You need to coordinate with your brother. BrightPath has the care calendar." The care calendar was fiction. When I asked Mark to send an actual aide, he said staffing was impossible during COVID and that I should be grateful I was not exposing Ruth to outsiders. When I asked Kelly why her name was on overnight care notes, she said, "You have no idea what it takes to run a business. Mark is trying to keep Grandma eligible." Eligible for what? I asked. She rolled her eyes. Help, the thing you keep complaining you need. The third proof beat came because Mark got careless with email. On June 2, 2021, he forwarded a PDF care summary to my father and copied me by mistake. The subject line was, "For county review, use clean version." I opened it at the kitchen table while Ruth ate oatmeal. The summary said BrightPath had provided 620 hours of companion care since March 2020. It listed Kelly as supervising family liaison. It listed me as a voluntary household support person. Voluntary. That one word made my hands go numb. The PDF included care notes that sounded almost like mine but not quite. Ambulated patient to bathroom, prepared scrambled eggs, encouraged hydration, provided cognitive stimulation through card game. But the times were wrong. The language was polished. The notes described things that had happened, but not by the people who signed them. At the bottom, under family contribution, Mark had written, "Granddaughter resides in home rent-free and assists informally between covered shifts." Informally. I had been awake at 3:00 a.m. cleaning a wound dressing because Ruth's incision scar had opened after a bad transfer. I had missed dental appointments, birthdays, weddings, job interviews, and the last normal year of my 20s. Informally. Ruth watched my face. "Read it to me," she said. I did. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she asked for a pen. On a yellow legal pad, she wrote a sentence slowly, with her left hand, each letter dragged and uneven. "Nina's work is not informal." Then she dated it. That page went in the green folder, too. Ruth saw more than I wanted her to see. One night in November 2021, after I helped her into bed, she said, "You are disappearing in this house." I said, "I am fine." She said, "That is what people say when they are too tired to argue." Then she pointed to the dresser, top drawer. By 2022, Mark's agency was doing well enough to move into a small office near the hospital. BrightPath bought 2 wrapped cars and sponsored a little league team. Their slogan was on a vinyl banner, "Compassion you can count on." I saw that banner when I drove Ruth to her orthopedic follow-up. I wanted to pull over and scream. Instead, I parked, unloaded her walker, and got her inside before the rain started. The fourth proof beat came from a nurse named Talia. Talia worked for the county aging office. She came in March 2022 for an annual home assessment. My father arranged it and told me to make sure the house looked normal. Normal meant clean sheets, filled pill organizer, no laundry in the hallway, no notes on the counter that showed how much of the care was mine. Talia was in her 40s, with calm eyes and a clipboard she did not use until she had watched the room for a while. She asked Ruth questions directly. Could she prepare meals? Could she bathe? Could she transfer? Who was present overnight? Ruth looked at me. I did not move. "Nina," Ruth said. "Any agency aides?" Talia asked. Ruth turned her head toward my father, who had come for the assessment and was standing near the bookcase like a man supervising a delivery. "Not inside this house," Ruth said. My father cleared his throat. "Mom gets confused about names sometimes. Brightpath coordinates support." Talia wrote something down. After the assessment, while my father took a call in the driveway, Talia stayed behind and washed her hands in the kitchen. The water ran loud. She said quietly, "Do you have records?" I looked at her reflection in the window. Records of what? Of who is actually here. My throat tightened. She turned off the water. "I cannot tell you what to do, but if billing and care do not match, preserve everything. Do not give originals to family, and if Ruth can write or state her wishes, keep those separate." Then she handed me a business card with her direct line written on the back. That card became the first official thing in the green folder. 3 weeks later, Mark called me furious. "What did you say to the county nurse?" "Nothing." "Do not play dumb. They asked for clarification on service logs. Maybe you should clarify them." "You think you are clever," he said. "You are not. You are living in Grandma's house, eating food we help pay for and acting like a victim." I said, "I am doing the work you bill for." He said, "We are keeping this practical." That time, Ruth was close enough to hear him through the phone. She reached for my wrist after I hung up. "Practical," she said, "is what selfish people call it when the numbers favor them." The midpoint reversal happened in August 2022, and it was bigger than fake care bills. I found the service agreement in the bottom drawer of Ruth's desk while looking for property tax papers. It was a Brightpath Companion Services client packet, signed with Ruth's name, dated April 4, 2020. The signature was shaky, but it was wrong. Ruth made her R with a loop even after the fall. This R was sharp. The packet authorized Brightpath to manage care coordination, submit claims to her long-term care policy, and receive reimbursement directly. It also had a family acknowledgement stating that unpaid household assistance was voluntary and not subject to wage claims. My name was printed under household assistant. I had never seen it. Beside it was a scribbled signature that looked like someone trying to make my name while thinking about it too hard. For a minute, I could not hear anything except the timer clicking on the counter. Ruth was napping in the recliner. The house smelled like tomato soup. A blue jay was beating itself against the reflection in the dining room window. I photographed every page. Then I called Talia from the porch. She answered on the second ring. "I found a contract with my forged signature," I said. She did not gasp. She did not ask if I was sure. She said, "Do you feel safe in the home tonight?" That question changed the shape of the problem. Until then, I had thought I was trapped in a family argument about appreciation and unpaid labor. Now an official person was asking whether I was safe because there was a forged contract tied to a licensed agency. I said, "Ruth is safe. I'm not sure about me." Talia told me to put the documents somewhere outside the house. I drove to Mr. Haskins and asked if he could keep an envelope. He took it without opening it and wrote the date across the seal. "Postal habit," he said, "chain of custody." That night, I slept less than an hour. The next day, I asked Ruth directly if she remembered signing anything for Brightpath. She was having a clear morning. Toast, coffee, blue cardigan, hair brushed the way she liked. I asked, "Did you sign a service agreement giving Mark's agency permission to manage your claims?" "No," she said. "Did you sign anything saying my help was voluntary?" Her eyes sharpened. "Never." I put the packet on the tray table and showed her the signatures. Ruth looked at them for a long time. Then she said, "Bring me my courthouse glasses." They were old bifocals with a brown frame, stronger than her regular pair. She examined the page like she was back behind a filing counter. "That is not my R," she said, "and that is not your N." She asked for the yellow pad. It took her 11 minutes to write 6 sentences. "I did not sign this Brightpath contract. I did not authorize anyone to call Nina's care voluntary. Nina has provided the care in my home. BrightPath staff have not provided the services listed. If my name is used to say otherwise, it is false. Ruth Elaine Mercer. She dated it and asked me to video her reading it aloud. I did. That video became the center of everything. From then on, Ruth and I lived two lives. In the visible one, I made oatmeal, changed sheets, did transfer practice, smiled thinly when my father dropped off groceries and reminded me how lucky I was to have a roof. In the hidden one, we built a file. Talia could not discuss an investigation, but she told me where to send a complaint. Pennsylvania Department of Health Home Care Registry, County Aging Services Fraud Referral, Insurance Special Investigations Unit, State Labor Department Wage Complaint. I stared at that list for a week before sending anything. Ruth said, "You are allowed to tell the truth before you are completely ready for the fallout." I mailed copies from the post office 2 towns over. Stay with me through the review, and subscribe if you want more stories where quiet records do the talking, because this is where the paper trail stopped being private. The fallout did not come fast. That is another thing people get wrong about proof. They think once you have it, justice kicks the door open. Most of the time, justice sends a form letter, assigns a case number, and tells you not to discuss pending matters. For almost a year, nothing seemed to happen. Ruth declined slowly. Congestive heart failure, more pain, less appetite. She had good mornings and bad nights. On bad nights, she apologized for keeping me there. On good mornings, she asked for the folder and made me read the index aloud. Care logs, visitor lists, BrightPath invoices, porch camera clips, county assessment notes, the forged agreement, Ruth's statement, and medical capacity letters. She would nod after each item. "Show your work," she said. That was her courthouse version of faith. In January 2023, I received a letter from the Insurance Special Investigations Unit. They could not share findings with me, but they acknowledged receipt of documentation and asked whether I would provide a sworn statement. I drove to a notary in a UPS store during one of the rare afternoons a paid respite aid actually came. Not BrightPath. Talia helped arrange 2 hours through a different county program after Ruth had a hospitalization. I sat at a little counter beside shipping boxes and signed a statement that said I had provided daily and overnight care from February 2020 forward, that BrightPath staff had not been present for many build shifts, and that my signature on the voluntary household assistant form was not mine. My hand shook so badly, the notary asked if I needed water. I said no, because if I drank water, I would cry. The 5th proof beat came from Ruth's doctor. Dr. Sayegh had been Ruth's primary care physician for 9 years. He was precise, not warm, but he listened. In February 2023, Ruth asked him during an appointment to document her capacity to identify who provided her care and whether she understood the BrightPath paperwork. He looked at me, then at Ruth. "That is a specific request," he said. Ruth said, "I used to file motions for judges. Specific saves time." He almost smiled. He performed a cognitive screening, asked her about dates, medications, current events, family names, care routines. Ruth did not get every item perfect, but she knew who helped her, who did not, what she had signed, and what she had not. Doctor. Sayegh wrote a letter stating that on the date examined, Ruth demonstrated capacity to state her care history, identify caregivers, and deny execution of the disputed service agreement. He added one sentence I read 5 times in the parking lot. Patient reports that granddaughter Nina Mercer provides the overwhelming majority of daily and overnight care. Overwhelming majority. Not informal, not help, not free housing, overwhelming majority. I put the letter in a plastic sleeve. Ruth asked me to read it again when we got home. Then she asked for the red timer and held it against her chest. March 2023 brought the first visible crack in Mark's confidence. He arrived at the house on a Tuesday morning with a clipboard and Kelly beside him. That alone was strange. Kelly had not been inside Ruth's house in 9 months. "We need updated signatures for compliance," Mark said. Ruth was in the recliner. I was folding towels at the dining table. "What compliance?" I asked. "Routine, state stuff. Do not make it a production." He put the clipboard on Ruth's tray table. My father stood near the door, arms crossed. My mother looked at the carpet. Ruth did not touch the pen. "Read it," she said to me. Mark laughed once. "Grandma, it is standard." "Read it," she repeated. I picked up the packet. It was a revised family care acknowledgement. It said BrightPath had coordinated unpaid family support at Ruth's request. It said any family member residing in the home did so for mutual convenience. It said no employment relationship had been created with BrightPath or with Ruth's estate. My name was typed into the release line. I looked at Mark. "You want me to sign away a wage claim you say does not exist?" He flushed. "It is standard compliance language." Ruth said no. Dad stepped forward. "Mom, this protects everyone." "It protects Mark," I said. Dad snapped. "Nina, you have been living here for 3 years without rent. Stop acting like the family owes you a salary." Ruth's voice was weak but clear. She earned one. The room froze. My father looked at her like she had betrayed him. Mark's face changed from salesman to something harder. "You do not understand the paperwork," he said. Ruth reached into the basket beside her chair and pulled out the red timer. She turned the dial to 5 minutes and set it on the tray. "Then explain it before the bell," she said. Nobody laughed. Mark grabbed the clipboard and left before the timer rang. Mr. Haskins' porch camera caught them leaving. It also caught Mark standing in the driveway, saying to my father, loud enough for the camera microphone, "If she files anything after Ruth dies, we bury her in rent value." Mr. Haskins brought me that clip on another flash drive. I did not sleep that night, but I did smile once. Not because it was funny, because some people are so used to being believed that they confess to the driveway. Ruth died on September 19, 2023 at 4:38 a.m. in her own bed with the hallway light on and the red timer silent on the nightstand. It was not dramatic. It was a long exhale after a hard week. I was holding her left hand. My parents were not there. Mark was not there. Kelly was not there. The hospice nurse, Janice, came at 5:22. She was kind in the practical way good nurses are kind. She confirmed the time, called the funeral home, and helped me choose clean clothes from Ruth's closet. Navy dress, pearl earrings, the courthouse pin shaped like a little file folder. Before she left, Janice put one hand on my shoulder and said, "You gave her what people always say they want and rarely get. Home." I wanted that to be enough. It was not, because grief does not erase paperwork. The funeral was 4 days later. My father cried in the front pew like a man auditioning for memory. Mark gave a speech about how Grandma taught all of us to care. Kelly dabbed her eyes with a tissue that stayed folded. People thanked me in the receiving line, but always quickly, like they did not want to make the family uncomfortable. At the luncheon, my father told me we needed to discuss a move-out timeline. I was holding a paper plate with potato salad on it. "Move out?" I asked. "The house will need to be handled through the estate," he said. "We do not want confusion." I have lived there 4 years. "And we appreciate that," he said, "but practical decisions have to happen." There it was again, practical. Mark joined us with coffee in his hand. "We will make sure you land on your feet." I looked at him. "What does that mean?" Kelly answered, "It means you are resourceful. You will figure it out." I threw the paper plate away without eating. The will reading was October 3, 2023, at Andrade and Bell, a brick law office above a dental practice. Present were my father, Alan, my mother, Denise, Mark, Kelly, Aunt Marion by video, me, and Ms. Sophia Andrade, Ruth's lawyer. Ms. Andrade was small, silver-haired, and so calm she made everyone else look over-rehearsed. She explained that Ruth had a simple will for personal items and a separate trust arrangement for assets. My father's eyebrows moved at the word trust. Mark's mouth tightened. The will gave my mother Ruth's wedding china. Aunt Marion got the courthouse pin collection. Mark got the grandfather clock he always liked. My father got Ruth's car, a 2012 Buick with 92,000 miles. Kelly got nothing directly, which made her stare at the table. Then Ms. Andrade said, to my granddaughter Nina Mercer, I leave the red kitchen timer from my counter and $10. That was when my father laughed. Not a surprised laugh, a relieved one. Mark followed. Kelly smiled. My mother looked at the ceiling. $10, Mark said. That is almost insulting. Kelly said, maybe Ruth knew Nina had already got enough living rent-free. My father shook his head, still smiling. Mom had a sense of humor. I stared at the red timer in its little cardboard box. Ms. Andrade did not give it to me yet. She waited until the laughter settled. Then she said, Ruth asked me to open a second packet if anyone laughed at Nina's bequest, questioned her contribution, or used the phrase rent-free. My mother closed her eyes. Ms. Andrade removed a sealed manila envelope from a locked file box. Across the front, in Ruth's uneven handwriting, were the words, if they forget what Nina did. The room went quiet enough that I heard the elevator ding downstairs. Inside was not a new will leaving me a surprise house. That would have been simpler. Ruth had already handled the house through a life estate transfer recorded 6 months before she died. I did not know that yet. What was inside the packet was worse for them. An index, a sworn statement, a care ledger summary, copies of BrightPath invoices, the forged service agreement, Dr. Sayeg's capacity letter, Talia's county assessment note, Mr. Haskins' porch camera stills, a letter from the insurance investigator acknowledging overpayment concerns, a notice from the Department of Health scheduling an administrative review of BrightPath's license. And one more document. A caregiver compensation memorandum Ruth had signed with Ms. Andrade in May 2023. Ms. Andrade read it aloud. From February 10, 2020 through September 19, 2023, Nina Mercer provided daily and overnight care in my home. I was advised of fair market live-in companion and personal care rates in Lancaster County. I was advised that room value may be offset. I find that the care provided exceeded the value of lodging and household food. I direct my trust to compensate Nina Mercer in the amount of $238,400, less $10 already paid under the will, and to transfer 41 Finch Lane to her through the recorded remainder interest already executed. My father stood halfway up. What recorded remainder interest? Ms. Andrade looked at him. Ruth transferred the remainder interest in the residence to Ms. Mercer in April, reserving a life estate for herself. It was recorded with the county recorder on April 28, 2023. Mark said she was not competent. Ms. Andrade slid Dr. Sayeg's letter forward. That is addressed. Dad said Nina manipulated her. Ms. Andrade opened another tab. The document was witnessed by me, my paralegal, and a mobile notary. Ruth also recorded a video statement. Kelly leaned forward. You cannot just give someone a house because they helped you. Ms. Andrade said, people can give their property to anyone they choose, Mrs. Mercer. Kelly hated that she knew her name. Then Ms. Andrade turned to Mark. There is a separate matter. Ruth authorized this office to forward copies of the care records to the Department of Health, the County Aging Office, the insurance carrier, and the State Labor Department. A review has been scheduled for BrightPath Companion Services next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Your attendance has been requested. Mark's face drained. This is privileged family information, he said. No, Ms. Andrade said. These are records related to licensed care billing and a disputed service agreement. My father pointed at me. Did you do this? For once, my voice did not shake. Grandma did. That was true in the only way that mattered. I had gathered records. Ruth had decided what they meant. Mark tried to recover. Look, if there are clerical issues, we can fix them internally. Ms. Andrade picked up the red timer and placed it in front of me. Ruth anticipated that phrase too. She opened Ruth's final letter. Alan and Mark, if you are hearing this, you laughed at Nina. That means you mistook quiet for stupid. Nina gave me 4 years of her body, her sleep, her work, her patience, and her future plans. Alan, you visited 43 times in 4 years and stayed long enough to drop off groceries you bought with my debit card. Mark, your agency billed for care you did not provide. Kelly, your name appears on overnight care notes for nights you spent in your own bed. Denise, you watched and called it peacekeeping. My mother made a sound, small and sharp. Ms. Andrade kept reading. You all said Nina lived rent-free. The house was not free. She paid for it in lifted weight, missed wages, panic nights, changed sheets, medical appointments, and the slow erasure of her own life. I know because I watched. I know because I counted. I know because I wrote it down when you thought old women do not keep records. Mark looked at the door. The letter continued. The red timer is not junk. It is the sound of every hour Nina did not forget me. If you are angry, take it to the records. I taught my children better than this, but Nina was the one who remembered the lesson. Show your work. Ms. Andrade folded the letter. Nobody spoke. Then Aunt Marion, still on video, said from her tablet, Ruth called me after she signed the house papers. She knew exactly what she was doing. Alan, sit down before you embarrass yourself further. My father sat down. The administrative review happened 6 days later in a state office building that smelled like copier toner and wet coats. The room was not big. Long table, gray carpet, wall clock, speakerphone in the center. But there were enough people in it to make the truth feel public. A Department of Health compliance officer, a county aging supervisor, an insurance investigator, a state labor department intake specialist, Talia, the county nurse, Mark and his business attorney, Kelly, my father, Ms. Andrade, me, Mr. Haskins, who looked annoyed that he had to wear a tie, Dr. Sayegh by video for a short statement. The compliance officer, Mr. Reddick, explained that this was an administrative review of billing integrity, service documentation, client authorization, and caregiver classification. Mark started with his polished voice. BrightPath is a small, family-owned agency. Documentation during the pandemic was challenging. We served vulnerable clients under difficult circumstances. Mr. Reddick said, understood. We will begin with dates of claimed overnight care. The first screen showed BrightPath's May 2020 billing summary. Kelly's name appeared beside 31 overnight shifts. Mr. Reddick asked Kelly, did you stay overnight at 41 Finch Lane during May 2020? Kelly looked at Mark. Her attorney whispered, but she did not have one, only Mark's business attorney, and that difference mattered. I checked on Ruth, she said. That was not the question. No, she said. The insurance investigator marked something on a form. Second screen, claimed wellness visits by BrightPath staff. Then Mr. Haskins' porch camera clips lined up by date. BrightPath car arrives. Photo taken. Car leaves, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 3 minutes. Mr. Haskins said, I delivered mail for 37 years. I know the difference between a stop and a shift. Mark's attorney objected that the camera did not show the back door. I provided the back door key log, I said. Everyone turned toward me. Ruth had a lockbox after the fall. The code was only changed twice. I had photos of the lockbox seal on the disputed dates. Nobody opened it. The back door also had a simple contact sensor because Ruth wandered once at night and I wanted an alert. My phone app showed no entry during the claimed visits. Mr. Reddick asked how I had preserved the app records. Screenshots, exported CSV, and email confirmations, I said. For the first time that morning, Mark looked afraid of me. Third screen, the service agreement. The county aging supervisor compared Ruth's known signature from her assessment form to the agreement. Dr. Sayegh explained that Ruth had capacity in 2023 to deny the signature and identify her actual caregiver. Ms. Andrade explained that Ruth had rejected the agreement in a sworn statement. Then I was asked about my own signature. "Did you sign this voluntary household assistant acknowledgement?" Mr. Reddick asked. "No." "Did anyone discuss voluntary classification with you?" "No." "Were you paid by BrightPath?" "No." "Were you paid by Ruth during the care period?" "Only small cash for household expenses, with receipts." "Did you provide overnight supervision?" "Yes, every night except 5 documented respite periods." The labor intake specialist looked up. "Every night for how long?" "From February 10, 2020 through September 19, 2023. She did not react much, but her pen stopped moving for a second. Fourth screen, Ruth's video statement. I had not watched it since recording it. Hearing her voice in that state office room almost took my knees out. "My name is Ruth Elaine Mercer. I am in my house at 41 Finch Lane. Today is August 14, 2022. I did not sign the BrightPath contract shown to me. I did not authorize anyone to say Nina's care was voluntary. Nina is the person here in the morning, afternoon, evening, and night. If money was paid for care, the record should say who did the care." On the video, she looked tired but clear. Her courthouse glasses sat low on her nose. The red timer was visible on the table beside her. Mark stared at the screen like he could make it stop by hating it. Fifth screen, the driveway clip from March 2023. "If she files anything after Ruth dies, we bury her in rent value." The room went still. Mr. Reddick replayed it once. Then he asked Mark, "Is that your voice?" Mark's attorney said, "We do not concede context." Mr. Reddick said, "I asked if it is his voice." Mark swallowed, "Yes." My father muttered, "This is a family matter." Talia, who had been quiet for most of the review, said, "Licensed billing is not a family matter." That sentence landed harder than yelling would have. By noon, the practical consequences were on the table. BrightPath's new client intake was suspended pending corrective action. Reimbursement claims tied to Ruth's file and 3 other reviewed clients were placed under audit. The insurance carrier issued a preliminary overpayment notice. The county removed BrightPath from its respite referral list. The Labor Department opened a classification and wage inquiry. Mark had to surrender service records within 10 business days, including metadata. Metadata was the word that broke Kelly. She said, "Mark, what metadata?" The compliance officer answered before Mark could. "Creation dates, user IDs, edits, and device records for service notes." Kelly went white. She had signed some notes in batches, not at the time of care. The metadata would show it. The agency software would show it. The quiet little clocks inside the files would show it. My father looked at me then, not angry exactly, more offended that the world had rules he could not talk his way around. "Nina," he said softly, "we could have handled this privately." I said, "You had 4 years to handle it privately." He looked away. The final order did not come that day. Official consequences rarely arrive with music. They come by certified mail, stapled packets, deadline dates, and words like preliminary, finding, corrective action, restitution. But Mark's face, when he walked out, told me he understood something had ended. 2 weeks later, BrightPath's website removed the county referral badge. A month later, the office sign came down. By January, Mark had closed the agency and taken a job selling medical equipment 2 counties over. The insurance carrier demanded repayment for unsupported services in Ruth's file. I never learned the exact amount for other clients, but Ms. Andrade told me the combined audit was serious enough that Mark settled rather than fight. The Labor Department process took longer. Because I had lived in Ruth's home and was family, the wage question was not simple. Mark tried to argue I was not his employee. Ruth's trust had already compensated me for direct care, which helped and complicated things at the same time. In the end, the Labor Department did not award me a giant wage judgment against Mark. That is not how the law worked in my case. But the state did issue a finding that BrightPath had misrepresented service delivery and used a disputed unpaid family classification in care records. That finding mattered more than a number. It meant the word voluntary did not survive contact with the file. The practical receipt came on February 12, 2024. Ms. Andrade called me to her office and handed me 3 things. A certified copy of the recorded deed showing 41 Finch Lane in my name. A trust distribution statement showing $238,390 transferred to my account after the $10 will payment. And a copy of the Department of Health corrective action closure letter stating BrightPath was no longer operating, and Ruth's complaint file had been substantiated in part. I sat there holding the papers, waiting to feel victorious. Mostly I felt tired. Ms. Andrade seemed to understand. She said, "Ruth wanted you to have the timer today, too." She opened a small box. The red timer sat inside, cleaned but still cracked near the dial. There was a note under it. "Nina, if this timer is in your hand, it means they forgot. I am sorry they made you prove love as if love were not visible. Use the house for something that gives time back. That is what I want." I read the note twice. Use the house for something that gives time back. The house changed slowly. I kept Ruth's courthouse pin collection in the hallway until Aunt Marion could choose what she wanted. I donated the medical supplies that could be donated. I threw away the transfer belt only after holding it for 10 full minutes. Some objects are not sentimental. They are just witnesses. By summer, I knew what to do with the house. Lancaster had caregiver support groups, but most met online or in church basements at times exhausted people could not attend. I started small. Saturday mornings, 10 to noon, Finch Lane caregiver coffee. Free, no advice unless asked. Bring paperwork if you need help sorting it. Bring nothing if you just need to sit. The first week, 2 people came. Mr. Haskins came too, pretending he was there to fix a sticking mailbox slot, then sitting at the table for coffee. The second week, 5 people came. By October, we had a rotating group of 12. A woman named Priya brought a shoebox of hospital bills and cried because her brothers called her dramatic. A man named Lewis fell asleep in Ruth's recliner for 20 minutes while his wife with early dementia sat beside me sorting buttons by color. Nobody laughed at him. Nobody called him lazy. We let him sleep. I put the red timer on the kitchen counter during those meetings. I did not use it to measure anyone's turn. I kept it there because the house needed to remember its new job. On February 6, 2025, exactly 5 years after the rehab meeting where everyone volunteered my life for me, I held a 1-year coffee morning at Finch Lane. Not a party. Just biscuits, coffee, folding chairs, and the people who understood why a person might need proof that they had existed. Aunt Marion came. Talia came on her lunch break, out of uniform, carrying store-bought cookies. Mr. Haskins brought a stack of index cards and wrote arrival times on them as a joke. Marisol came from Pine Street with a bulletin board for resource flyers. At noon, I opened Ruth's final green folder, not the investigation copy. My copy, the one with tabs in her handwriting. I read the label on each tab aloud for the group. Care. Visitors. Bills. Videos. House. Nina. The last tab surprised me. I had never opened it. I think part of me had been afraid. Inside was one sheet of paper and a photo. The photo was me asleep at the kitchen table in 2021, head on folded arms, red timer beside me, Ruth's untouched toast in the foreground. I looked thin, pale, worn down in a way I had not seen then because I had stopped looking in mirrors. On the paper, Ruth had written one paragraph. Nina thinks I do not see her when I am confused. I see her. I see the way she warms the towel before my shower. I see her count my pills twice. I see her standing on the porch at night trying to remember how to breathe. I see everyone who leaves and everyone who stays. If this folder outlives me, let it say this clearly. Staying was work, and Nina did the work. I could not finish reading. Talia took the paper gently and read the last sentence again. Staying was work, and Nina did the work. That was the emotional receipt. Not the money, not the house, not even Mark losing the agency he used to hide behind. It was Ruth's handwriting saying she saw me when I felt erased down to function. I framed that page and hung it in the kitchen, beside the red timer on a small shelf. Under it, I put Marisol's old sentence on a card. Love does not clock you out at the end of the day. These days, I still work at Pine Street 3 days a week. Finch Lane Caregiver Coffee runs every Saturday. We do not solve everyone's problems. Some weeks all we do is sort papers into piles and remind people to eat something with protein. Some weeks someone cries because a sibling posted a smiling photo from a visit that lasted 12 minutes. People ask if I think Ruth planned the laugh. I do, not because she was cruel, because she knew them. She knew my father would laugh if he thought he had won. She knew Mark would confuse a token with a verdict. She knew Kelly would say rent-free because people who benefit from invisible labor love that phrase. And she knew I might need the room to hear it before I believed I was allowed to stop carrying them. My name is Nina Mercer. I am 34 now. My family laughed when I inherited a red kitchen timer and $10 after 4 years of care. Then the second packet opened, and the records did what my voice could not do alone. They showed who entered the house and who only stood on the porch. They showed who signed notes and who actually stayed awake. They showed the difference between help, billing, and labor. They showed that a person can be quiet for years and still be building the loudest file in the room. The timer still works. It clicks unevenly now, and the bell is softer than it used to be. Every Saturday morning before people arrive, I turn it to 10 minutes while the biscuits warm. When it rings, I take them out before they burn. The house tells me not to forget. I do not.